Okay, I'm going to describe a basic test for Nosema using a hemocytometer for testing for Nosema in bees to check for level of infection in a given colony. You're going to need several pieces of equipment. One of them would be a binocular style microscope that has 100 to 400 time magnification. You're going to need a mortar and pestle, pipettes, transfer droppers. You're going to need Neubauer bright line grid-based slide and potentially some slide covers. You're going to also need some extra water to basically rinse off your gear once you're complete. And finally, you're going to need a syringe or a dropper that you can measure 1 to 15 milliliters of water when you're adding it to the bee guts. So first off, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to collect at least 100 forager bees as they come in from the field right at the entrance. People have built small vacuum systems that you're actually collecting the bees as they come in, landing on the board. You could also collect them by hand. You want to be careful when you're collecting that you don't actually smash the bee before you actually get them into a collection chamber. You can collect them into, if you're going to collect them more or less by hand, you're going to want to put them into a baggie that has, or a container that has isopropyl alcohol in it, so you're killing the bees instantly and preserving the bees at the same time. Once you've collected the bees, you're going to want to euthanize them 100% and basically remove the abdomen from the rest of the body. The abdomen is where the intestinal system is going to be storing any amount of nosema will be collected. It's also easier just in terms of the overall amount, total amount of bee byproduct that you will be experiencing in the next step. You're going to want to remove at least 25 bee abdomens and place them into a mortar. And then with the pestle, you're going to actually grind up those, basically the abdomen, and prep that for the actual extraction of a solution, a slurry, if you will, for the next step. So in the next step, what you're going to want to do is, if you have 25 abdomens, you're going to want to add 0.5 milliliters of water per abdomen. If you put the whole bee in, you're going to actually put in 1 full milliliter of water per whole bee. You're better off actually just having the abdomen and the half milliliter, because then you have a less chance of actually picking up the exoskeleton and other bee parts when you're transferring the slurry to the slide. So in the next step, what you're going to do is you're going to thoroughly grind up the abdomens with your water and make sure that the slurry's nice and crushed, so that you're actually extracting as much of the contents from the intestinal system or the digestive system as possible. After you've ground up the abdomens and extracted as much of the contents of the digestive system as possible, place your mounting slide in a clean, dry place. Once you draw off a subsample of the slurry from the mortar, fill the 2 troughs on the mounting slide and then let that settle for about 60 seconds, and that will allow for the particulate in the slurry to settle to the bottom of the slide. Mount that slide onto the microscope platen, and then use your 100 time microscope setting to actually get your focus, center your field, and adjust for any sort of irregularities in your setting. Then switch over to your 400 time magnification. Then what you're going to do is count the number of Nosema spores in each of the different grid areas. starting in the upper left-hand corner as your number 1 grid area, upper right-hand corner as your number 2 area, bottom left-hand corner as your number 3 area, bottom right-hand corner as your number 4 area, and the dead center as your number 5 area. If you end up gathering some of the exoskeleton of the bee, and that is actually obscuring enough of the field in those particular areas, then just go over to an adjacent square, immediately adjacent, and count the spores in that given area. Once you've counted the spores in each of the fields, you will multiply that number by 25,000, and that will give you a general idea of the overall infection load in the hive. Once you've completed the entire process, then you're going to carefully clean out all of the slide structure, your pipettes, and any of the mortar and pestle, anything that's come in contact with the Nosema spores. Carefully clean that up. And that is the brief and simple process of collecting information and data on whether or not you should treat for Nosema in your hive.